I heard this from a friend at college. It's a common story, but there was an apartment that had one room where no one stayed for very long. Everyone left within 1 week of renting it. The room was on the first floor in the corner of the building, and you could reach it by climbing a flight of stairs with 7 steps. The landlord felt uncomfortable about the whole affair and it bothered him a lot, but one day he got a tenant who stayed well over a week. That made the landlord feel happier, but just to make sure everything was alright, he went to the room to check on the tenant. But no one responded to the landlord knocking. The landlord felt something was amiss and he rang up the police. When the police arrived, they broke into the room together. Inside, they found the tenant's dead body. The cause of death was unclear, and to find out what had happened, the police went around asking for information. They managed to talk to some of the previous tenants of the room, but none of them was willing to talk about the room. However, in the end, they did manage to get one person talking. His story went a little like this. Every night, a child's voice was heard. On the first night after the tenant moved in, the voice said, "One step I've climbed." He wondered what it was, but nothing else happened, so he just ignored it. But the next day, he heard the same voice say, "2 steps I've climbed." On the third day, it said, "3 steps I've climbed." And so it went on the same way on the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth day. The voice was clearly getting closer. There were only 7 steps on the stairs. All previous tenants ran away fearing what might happen if it reached the 7th step. And it appears the only person who knows the answer to that is the dead tenant. This happened quite a long time ago, when I was about 4. It was early in the morning. I say morning, but it was still dark in my room. Suddenly, I found myself standing on the bed, being told off severely by my mother. "Why did you do it?" She questioned me angrily, but I had absolutely no idea what I had done. I would say that was a normal reaction from someone who had just woken up. I wanted to ask her what I had done, but she was so furious that I thought the question would only make her angrier. So I just kept apologizing to her without understanding the situation. I said sorry to her again and again, but she wasn't about to let me off that easily. They say when something unpleasant is happening, the time tends to go by very slowly, but even so, as a child, I felt that it was going on for far too long. For more than an hour, my mother kept asking me stuff like, "For what reason did you do it? What was the reason? What time do you think it is?" She went on and on in the same manner. Well, my mother was the type who could go on forever once she started telling people off, and I knew that apologizing to her was useless. If I didn't say sorry, she would go on being angry, and even if I did say sorry, she would still be angry. So nothing I did or said would make much difference. That was what I thought. And then I thought to myself lightly, "Oh, she's in a especially bad mood today, or I must have done something really terrible." But as my head became clearer, I started noticing a few things, like although it was around 4 or 5 in the morning and my mother was shouting at the top of her voice, the noise hadn't disturbed my father, who was sleeping right in the next room. Well, that was perhaps okay, but it was strange that my 2-year-old sister, who was sleeping on the bottom of the bunk bed below me, hadn't even stirred. My little sister should have woken up by then, especially because the shouting had got so loud to the point where it was impossible for anyone to ignore it and go on sleeping. That was the first thing that came into my head, and then I began to notice other odd things. To start with, I heard no sound. There was no sound of the clock ticking, which usually bothered me, and no sound of cars that could usually be heard outside around that time of the day. It was far too quiet. And the strangest of all was my mother's unusual persistence. I apologized to her over and over, but she still wouldn't forgive me. Normally, she would have stopped telling me off by then. Yes, she could be persistent, but not that persistent. I then realized the most frightening thing of all. I had not yet seen my mother's face. To be more precise, I couldn't see her face because it was too dark. I was being told off in complete darkness. I just assumed she was my mother by her voice and by the sense of her presence, but I hadn't checked if she was really my mother. Why did you do it? What time do you think it is? Are you really sorry about what you've done? She kept going on about the same things. Is she really my mother? The moment I thought so, a hand flew to my face. Slap. I was hit hard across the cheek, but the hand felt unnatural. It had abnormally long nails, and it also felt very cold. She is not my mother. I knew it this time. My mother had fragile nails which would break easily, and she hardly ever grew them long because of it. Who is she? As soon as the question came into my mind, the voice, which had been high and hysteric before, suddenly became lower and prolonged, like the sounds on an old cassette tape. It had changed into a really deep voice, and the things she said became gradually abnormal too. Why did you kill? For what reason did you kill? Why did I die? Those were the words she spoke now. I've got to run away, I thought, but I was standing on the top of the bunk bed. I could get down only by the ladder, and the woman was standing right at the bottom of the ladder, and she was still shouting angrily. No, she was actually pleading now. And up until then, I thought my body was only tense because of being nervous, but now I realized I was suffering from paralysis. Oh God, I can't move. The very moment I thought so, the woman, with a loud and clear voice, said, "Are you really sorry?" And she brought her face closer until it was just a few inches from mine. Her hair was wild, her skin pallid, and she had no eyeballs. I lost consciousness. Was it in the morning or in the afternoon? When I came around, I again found myself standing on the bed, being told off by my mother. But this time I could hear noises outside, and moreover it was bright and sunny in the room. I could also see her face. There was no question that the person who was shouting at me was my mother. Why did you do it? What were you doing? Where did you go? She was asking me those questions. This time, too, I had no idea what I had done, so I asked her, "What have I done? Were you sleepwalking or what?" Then she started telling me what had happened. The night before, around 2 after midnight, my parents were in the sitting room when they saw me walk past the room. They thought I was going to the bathroom, but then they heard me say, "I'm going outside to play," and then apparently I just disappeared through the front door. My action was totally unexpected, and I was gone before they had time to stop me. They followed me and went outside and tried to find me but couldn't. After a while, they gave up searching and came home to call the police, but when they checked the bedroom again, somehow, they found me on the bed, fast asleep. They were going to wake me up and try to ask me what had happened, but no matter what they did, I wouldn't wake up. They were also exhausted after the night of searching, and before they knew, they had fallen asleep themselves. They slept until they were woken up by my scream. All I said to them in the end were, "Yes, I was sleepwalking. No, I don't remember what I did." I never told a soul about my experience until now. Do you think this is something serious? One day, my boyfriend emailed me a video. Wondering what it was about, I watched it. It turned out to be a video about him committing suicide. With a rope around his neck, he jumped, and after a painful struggle, he died. And the video ended there. I was in a station, sitting on a bench and waiting for the train to come. Presently, a lady holding a baby to her breast sat down next to me. Well, I'm fond of children, and I couldn't help but stare at the sweet-looking baby. The lady noticed this, and she started chatting to me in a friendly manner. "This isn't actually a baby, you know. It's a bag." As she said so, she turned over the baby's clothes and showed me a zipper on the belly. Now that she said it, I noticed that the baby's eyes appeared to be made of glass too. Wow, it looks very realistic. Yes, I know. It takes a lot of work to make it, time consuming too, but it doesn't bother me because I love recycling things, she replied with a smile. Just then, the train pulled up. She stood up and got on the train. I was going to catch the same train, but I couldn't bring myself to move. So I sat there rigid and stared after the train until it disappeared into the distance.
Sinister V's, sinister voices. Yo. Action-packed Black Mac 10, Junior and his friend, not a pot to piss and starving brothers on a mission. 2:30, brilliant plan around the toll booth, GW Bridge, got the weapon concealed, nothing to lose. They choose to break the rules at all costs, stick them in Jersey, hit the other side to New York, black and red leather suits and black biker boots. One got the gun, the other one controls the motorbike, adrenaline pumping, dreams of cash, anybody try to stop them getting lead in their face, believe that. Black Pack.